I remember just going home and telling my mom, and she broke down crying, and that's when it hit me. I
Aw.
was like, I was like, I'm about to cry. I was like, okay, like this means something, more than I've really ever thought.
Right. Today on the show, a former football player out of Miami University in Ohio and the founder of the Fourth Phase, Calvin Blackmon, is up next. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the world of sports, talking with retired athletes, current athletes, and everyone that makes the sports world great. A quick reminder, if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, make a note now, subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. You can find all the info at 5thquarterpodcast.com. Now, grab your iced tea or your coffee. Get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Now, let's talk about today's guest. He's a former D1 football player at Miami University in Ohio, where he played 4 years and was a member of the 2003 top 10 ranked team in the nation, a bowl champion, and an impressive record of 13-1. Today, he's the founder of the Fourth Phase, an organization changing the way athletes transition from sports to business. I couldn't be more excited to welcome to the show Calvin Blackmon.
Appreciate it, Sandy. It's been about a month coming or so, but we're here. So
Exactly.
no, I'm excited to be here. As I said, it's good to be on the other side of the microphone for this time. No pressure on me today.
That is true. I want to give a shout out to Marcus Johnson. He was in episode 31, also a football player from Miami University. He referred you to me, and you reached out about a month and a half ago to pick my brain on personal branding for athletes and also personal branding in general. And we had a little deal. I'm like, you come on the show and I'll give you the info. And so here you are. And so I've been really excited about this conversation and just to catch up on what we talked about last month and your whole story. So let's start this conversation off. I want to dive in really deep. Who is Calvin today? Give me your one sentence.
Calvin today is a coach, a father, a husband, and a mentor. And when I say coach, I feel like that's a coach in all areas of life, including
Right.
sports.
Right, right. And I think that's very true. That's such a good point. A coach, no matter, let's talk about a sports coach, especially let's talk about football and basketball. Okay. I think that you're much more than just somebody that teaches them how to play the game. You're teaching them about life. You're teaching them about being young men. You're teaching them how to deal with life's pressure, what's coming down the road. So many of those things. So you're absolutely right. It's a coach of life, really.
Yeah, yeah. It's the cliche responses, right? That sports, what they do for you and what they do for so many. And I tell my wife, I don't know my wife. I'm not here today if I don't decide to pick up and go play football as a junior in high school. Like the way the universe works, I think there's a million stories out there, and so I'm thankful to Coach Place and my friend Tier who invited me out to practice that day.
Okay, so we're going to get into that story because you've kind of teased me about it. And before we get into that in just a minute, you only played 1 year of high school. So we'll get into that and how that happened because I think that's really incredible, especially when it comes to football. But let's go back, looking back at college and the years immediately after that. What do you see were your three biggest struggles?
For me, three biggest struggles were number one was not understanding how to leverage the resources that I had when I first got to college. Not knowing what college was going to be like and who to go to, how to leverage. For me, as we'll get into, it was like I'm here to play football, and wow, I don't even know how I got here. I'd say number two was the focus of understanding how important academics really were while I was in school.
Right.
And I think not even just academics, the work that has to go in off the field when it comes to like preparation to become a really good collegiate athlete, something
Right.
that I didn't do. And then I'd say number three, the work that goes into when you're leaving, right? What does life look like after football? I mean, I knew I wasn't going to the NFL, so I, but I didn't do the things that I needed to do to prepare. So yeah, for me, it was just not, it was kind of in a washing machine, I feel like, for 4 years.
That's interesting. A washing machine. So looking back though, what could you have had that would have helped you overcome these struggles, or at least one of these struggles? What could have been in place, or what could have been available to you?
Um, and not to say that it probably wasn't, because I don't, again, I also take accountability of how much I maybe not have
Sure.
seeked out, but knowing, having someone there to, honestly, I'll say this. So my father passed when I was 8.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like not having that father figure, whether it would have been my father or just someone there to talk to me during those tough times of this is what it's going to be like. My mom was amazing, right? But my
Right.
mom didn't play sports. So
Right.
she didn't understand that dynamic. It was more get your grades, do your thing, this, that, and the other. But it's like the preparation of what else goes into everything to be not good, but great or even elite at that level. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so, if I feel like if I would have had seeked out or even had that person. And my
Right.
brother-in-law was great too. He's like a father figure. But he was doing his own thing and he's
Sure.
years older than me. But I think having someone who I could have just picked up the phone every day and just called her every week to help me get through those tough moments and say, hey, this is what you need to be doing, or hey, look at these options. These are some things you should be doing or looking into. More direction would have been a game changer for me looking back.
It's interesting because this week, well, when yours airs, it'll be episode 55 with Grant Vermeer. He was in the Naval Academy. And one thing that struck me that kept him in the academy because he wanted to quit. Um, he said that there were a lot of mentors because it was expected that that's going to be such a hard thing for young men and young women to accept when they get into the academy. And also looking back at some of the conversations specifically with women in sports on the show, the difference that I've seen between women's sports and men's sports is the women's sports, the coaches, and this is no reflection on any of the men coaches, but the women coaches expect the women not to play pro sports because there's not an avenue necessarily for most of them. So they start preparing their players for life outside of sports. But the male coaches, and this is no disrespect to them at all, the guys, they have a path to pro sports in almost every sport, right? And
Yeah.
so there is a push, to do that. And mentors I think are really important, especially mentors that have some idea what sports is like, that have been a player. I love to see here in Memphis, we're starting to get more and more former players, specifically basketball, that are starting to be head coaches in the high school. And I really like seeing that because I'm hoping that they start teaching, how hard it is to get to that next level, what you need to prepare for that, those kind of things. So, and also you said that it was, kind of your responsibility too to seek out those things. But as an 18, 19-year-old kid, like, do you actually know to seek out those resources? I think it's some of the university's responsibility, and I do see that more now that they're promoting those resources more. You know, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And I think too, I think now with everything with the NIL, that it's becoming more of a business, right? And I think
right,
people are, I think people are seeing that, okay, well, they want to take advantage of these athletes from the NIL and
right,
different things. So it's kind of opening that up. But I also think too, you are, you're in your own head when you're 18 or 19. Like,
And you think you know everything, right?
thought I knew everything. I thought I was my freshman year. It's like I got a shot at the NFL, and then you get to college and you're like, whoa, everybody's good. Like,
Yeah.
and when you realize everybody's good, I didn't say, okay, but how do I separate myself? I just
Right.
kind of was like, everybody's good. Let's just do the thing and see what happens versus no, man, like now you've got to work even harder than those people who are really good because
That
they're better than you.
that funnel is slowly starting to narrow,
Yeah.
from high school to college.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
who do you think you would be today if you had not had those struggles? I know that's a little.
Um, for me, it's been the journey has, I mean, I always hear, I wish I knew the gentleman's name. I watch this podcast, but he says it takes years to cultivate clarity, right?
Yes, it does.
And for me, you know, I don't know. Like I go back to if I don't have those struggles, even if I don't have that opportunity, like, and this is no knock, but like I'm probably in Dayton, Ohio, back home in Dayton, Ohio. I would have went to community school, probably picked up a trade and just kind of figured out life. So
Right.
like getting the opportunity to go to Miami, having those struggles, the relationships that's the one thing that I did come away from Miami, like the relationships, it's afforded me so many opportunities.
Hmm.
So honestly, if I don't go through those struggles, I'm
You're
probably in Dayton struggling.
you're exactly right. I look back, I grew up in a really small town with 5,000 people. And, if I hadn't had the struggles or my mom hadn't had the struggles, like she pushed me out, right? Um, you know, I also think that the journey teaches you so much.
Yes.
And this is something, and I can't think of who said it, but we are best positioned to teach the people that we once were, right? You know?
100%.
100% on that. So you just talked about, so let's move into that. Where did you grow up? You just said Dayton, Ohio. So tell us about growing up in Dayton, Ohio.
Grew up in Dayton, Ohio. I used to joke with my teammates. Dayton's a small city. I'm in Cincinnati now, so it's definitely much smaller than Cincinnati. And some people consider Cincinnati a small, big city.
Right.
But growing up in Dayton, Ohio, single parent home. Father passed away unexpectedly when I was 8 years old. Playing sports, two older sisters, and I was your normal kid. Blue collar family. My mom worked at General Motors for years, but she actually had to retire when I was like 9 years old, right after my father passed, because she hurt her back. So
Wow. Yeah.
my mom didn't. I don't know how she did it. However she made ends meet, not working, and having to retire at mid 40s,
Right.
and to have putting three kids through college. And so, but I mean, life was had a great childhood. I have zero complaints or anything. I don't have any story of hardships or anything. I just didn't apply myself.
But I think that is the case for a lot of kids. And I just want to is your mom still alive?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to give a shout out to her because that is just amazing, to deal with the death and then getting hurt and having to retire and then putting all three of you through school. Like that's just and just doing the role of both mother and father. I mean, that's just really, really amazing. So a shout out to her. Um, when did you start? So did you play sports as a child?
Yeah, so I started playing soccer when I was in first grade. Played soccer growing up all through childhood. Played baseball for some years. Played basketball for 6, 8 years. Wrestled for 1 year. It wasn't for me. Ran
Okay, that's a
track.
that's a new one. I haven't had quite anybody say wrestling.
Yeah, I think it was like fifth grade. So honestly, I thought wrestling was gonna. Fifth grade. The day after my first wrestling practice, funny story. I got in the car and told my mom. She said, "How was practice?" I said, "It was great, but there was no turnbuckle and ropes." She's like, this ain't the WWF. And I was like, so I went through with it for the year and I was like, nah, this isn't what I thought it was. So
Okay, that's really funny. Okay.
yeah, yeah. So,
Uh,
but yeah, I played sports my entire childhood.
so when did you find football, or did football find you?
Since it's a podcast, I'll tell the kind of interesting story.
Yeah.
My sophomore year, freshman, sophomore year, normal, high school kid playing basketball. And one day I got asked to go. I got asked if I was going to the game, and a friend of mine's dad was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You should go to the game." And I was like, "I don't have any money to get in." Just kind of joking. He's like, "If you carry the flag out for the team, I'll let you in the game for free." And I was like, "All right."
Okay, when that was a football game?
Football game, varsity
Okay.
football game.
Okay.
Yep. So um, I run the flag out for the team. I do that for the season, and it kind of becomes a thing my sophomore year. So then my junior year, the head coach would always pepper me in the hallway, like, "You're fast, so you run that flag," kind of blowing smoke. And I'm like, "You should come out for football." And I was like, "All right." So my junior year, I ended up one summer day, called a friend and asked him what he was doing. He said he was going to football. And so I said, "I'm going to come with you." And my mom didn't want me to go.
Right.
She's like, "Do something else." And I was like, I kind of made a comment. I said, if dad were living, he would let me go.
Oh.
I revisited that comment with her a few years back and she laughed. She's like, "Yeah, you said that." And I was like, she's like, "I'll let you
Oh.
go."
Oh.
So I went down and so I started playing my junior year and I played all junior varsity my junior year. So, all your friends are on varsity and here you are at 3 o'clock on a Thursday going to play JV football with
Right.
sophomores. So that's kind of how I got started. And then I dropped like 8 passes in a game, in a JV game. So like I wasn't any good. Uh, then going on my senior year at a graduation party, a head coach walks by. He goes, "Hey man, you're going to be my starting receiver next year." He says that in front of a group of people, and I'm just like, "Dude, have you
Dude.
seen me? Have you seen me play? Like, all right,
I'll send you the
uh,
tapes.
yeah." So we're at 7-on-7 camps that summer before senior year, and this light bulb goes off, and I'm start catching the ball and running around having fun. And my head coach was notorious for giving nicknames, and all the guys on my Miami team will tell you this. So like he's like, "Hey, you're gonna be the big circus because you're gonna make all the tricky catches." And I'm like, "All right, whatever." So fast forward to the season starting. Um, First 4 games of the year, I've probably got 4 or 5 touchdowns. I'm leading the area and receiving.
Wow.
So they come in and they do I'm leaving practice after like the fourth game, and I'm coming in and they've got a news reporter there from Dayton Daily News, and he's like asking me some questions. I don't know anything about this, and so a couple days go by or a week goes by, and this article pops up. So my mom wakes me up one morning, and I come out to the kitchen, and on the table it says flag bearer turn big circus turns to star wide receiver. And I had took my picture before the season
Right.
and The Rock was popular. So I threw my eyebrow up like The Rock when I did the picture because I was like, they're never going to use this picture in the paper. Like, I'm just going to goof off. So lo and behold, big circus with the picture of me with my eyebrow up like I'm The Rock, front page of Dayton Daily News, right up. So I'm like, oh my gosh. So I told my mom, I was like, I'm not going to school. Like, I was embarrassed. And she's like, well, then go retake the picture. And I was like, picture's actually kind of cool. Like, you know
Right.
what? We're gonna roll with this. So
Own it. Own it.
I'm gonna own it. And so we went on through, man, my senior year and ended up just having like a really good season with no intent of going to college to play any football at all. I
Okay,
was just playing.
I do want to ask, what was your intention at that time after graduation? Did you even give it a thought?
No, I hadn't filled out an application. I hadn't
Nothing.
applied. My mom wasn't very happy with me. Like I wasn't doing much of anything. Like
Just playing football.
I'm about to
That
go to Sinclair Community College, figure this out, and I don't know. And our senior year, we lose in the state semis. in the locker room crying, and our offensive coordinator walks in. He taps me on the shoulder. He says, "Hey, man," he's like, "you had a great season. I enjoyed coaching you." And he says, "I'm gonna enjoy watching you play next year on Saturdays." And I stopped and I go, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Colleges are calling." And I was like, "Huh. All right, I gotta finish crying. Whatever. I don't think anything of it." So, so like I'm so naive to any of this. Just whatever. So a couple weeks go by, and our head coach comes over this loudspeaker at the end of school. He's like, "Hey, any seniors that are graduating and want to play college football, we're gonna have a meeting after school. I want you to show up, and we'll talk about transcripts and all that good stuff."
Right.
So I'm walking. I happen to be walking out of school. I passed the head coach. He goes, "Hey, you coming to the meeting tonight?" I was like, "No," because you need to be there. I was like, "All right." So I go to the meeting. After the meeting, he calls me up. He's like, "Hey, Ohio State's called, Cincinnati's called, Miami's called, Toledo's called." He's naming all these big schools and different things. And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "They don't like your grades though." And I'm like, "Ugh." So now this is
Oh,
becoming serious where I'm
right.
like, okay. So weeks go by, school, the coaches are coming by and are, pulling me out of class. And I got a call one day. Coach was like, "Hey, come to the office to listen to this." I don't know if it was a voicemail or if Coach Hepp was on the phone, but he was like, "Hey, man, we want to offer you a full scholarship to come to Miami University to play football." And I was like, "I don't know what that means." Still, I'm like,
Right. Right.
"Okay." Like, he's kind of like, "You excited?" I'm like, "Yeah." And
Sure.
I remember just going home and telling my mom, and she broke down crying. And that's when it hit me. I
Aw.
was like, I'm about to cry. I was like, okay, like this means something, more than I've really ever thought.
Right.
Um, and so ended up at Miami University.
What did you do about the grade situation?
So I was what they call a Prop 48,
Ah,
which is
yes.
yeah, I was a Prop 48, which is no longer.
But explain for those that, because we have young people that listen that might not understand what Prop 48 is.
Yeah, I may butcher it too.
That's okay.
Basically, you're like a red shirt, but you can't play, you can't participate in any team activities your freshman year. You have to prove your grades. So it's basically, hey, your scholarship is, we're going to pay
Right.
for everything your freshman year, but it's on hold. And if you don't prove yourself after your first year, like it's null and void. You're not getting
I
this.
think
So
now they just call it academic I can't,
yeah, and
eligibility.
eligibility.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
talk today. Oh my God.
Yeah. So there
Um,
was three of us that came in that were Prop 48s. I won't throw my teammates out there under the bus
that's
because
okay. That's
they're
okay.
all super successful right now too. So, but yeah, we all came in, and yeah, so I ended up at Miami as a freshman as a Prop 48.
So, did that change your perspective on academics at that time?
It did, but again, this is where that washing machine happened. Like
Mm,
I had a friend's dad tell me, he's like, "You were all state," and I didn't even know what all state meant as an athlete. I knew none of this. Like I was just going through it. So like when you think about the academic piece, like no, I knew I had to work harder now, and I'm at
right.
college, and so like there was a light bulb that went off. Like you've got to focus, but it wasn't like academics became number one. Like I listened to Marcus. I love listening to Marcus's episode and talking to some of my teammates now, asking questions, and now being in the position I'm in as a coach and talking to athletes. I'm
Right.
like, don't do what I did. And if you do, like, let's figure out why you're doing that. And so, um, they didn't become more important to me, honestly. Like I was like, I'm here to play football, and I don't even know what that means. Like
Wow. Yeah.
I'm here.
Did you have any thoughts then as to life after college? Or again, you were just going through the routine?
I was so naive that I remember coming into Miami and I was talking to one of my high school teammates who talked me into coming to Miami with him. And we were talking about, oh, we're going to the NFL because we're going to college to play football. So now we're already thinking we're going to the NFL. We're talking about cars we're going to buy, all this stuff. And then I got to Miami and I told a teammate of mine one day at the like first practices, I said two dumb comments to one of my teammates. To one of them, I said, "I'm on scholarship and I'm going to take your spot." He was a walk on. He started over me for 3 years. Uh, I just texted him the other day. Love him to this day. Another guy who was a fifth year senior, I said, I'm on scholarship and I'm good or something. He goes, man, listen, everybody's good. He was like, and that's where that kind of slice of humble pie comes in. So like
Sure.
life after football, I was living in the moment. I feel like my entire college career because
Right.
I'm not supposed to be here. I just decided to pick this pigskin up 18 months ago or 12 months ago.
And that's just remarkable because you've got guys that literally play for years and go into college, and you did not. You were the flag bearer. I think that's the best recruiting thing for high school football ever. Um, what do you say, or have young athletes ask you this, but say they did. Have they said, well, you didn't really pay attention to academics and you turned out okay. Why should we?
um, I've I've coached college football for 3 years. And I can't remember if I've had someone necessarily say that.
Right.
Because I don't know if that is, I mean, I'm not gonna say I know there are kids out there who have that thought. I've personally never come across someone like that because I don't think I don't put that off as, I've learned so much, right? And I
Right.
was always smart, articulate, and everything. I was just in a whirlwind. So if I do come across someone like that or those students, like I have no problem sharing my story and being transparent with them and
Right.
letting them know. But I also want to understand the core of why they feel that way. Where are you? Where does that come from? Like, what are you missing? Like guidance, you know, you need a hug. Like, what is it that you could be
Right.
missing? So, but I can't recall someone, any of my players, because if that's your attitude, honestly, like,
You shouldn't even be there.
shouldn't even be there.
It's interesting because my professor in college, he was a political science class, and he was talking about teaching underprivileged people or low economics, like how do you get them to vote? And he said at the core of everything is education. You educate people, you give them power, right? Educate knowledge is power.
Yep.
Learning how to make decisions is power, and I've always remembered that. So now you're going through Miami University and you are doing the washing machine thing. What was life as a college football player like
So
for you? For
besides,
you? For you?
yeah, the best job I've ever had was coaching college football at St. Joseph's College, making $11,000 a year for 3 years. The best job I've ever had.
Where was that at? You can't just.
St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana.
Okay.
Really town of like 3,000 people. Um, but I say that to say that was the best job I've ever had. But the most fun that I've ever had outside of having kids now and spending time with them was playing football in college. I mean, I think every athlete tells you that their experiences in college are like they're remarkable, and everyone
It's
tells
the
you
best time of your life.
it's the best time of your life. I mean, the friendships. I mean, all
Right.
of the stuff, the locker room, and I think on being at the kind of the forefront, right? Like my football's not huge at Miami, but like knowing that you have this brotherhood and that people look up to you in a way,
Right.
right? They see
Right.
that because it's a very small percentage of people who get to experience that. And so like that was to me and to this day, like it was amazing. I mean, there's the experience was I don't even know how to really put it into words because it's again it's the reason I am where I am today, and you
Right.
can't really put that into words.
Sure. Did did were you able to stay grounded, or did the allure of being, a football player, did that kind of go to your head, or were you able to stay grounded? Because I've had some athletes on here that have talked about how, the fame. kind of went to their head and they kind of just slacked off a little bit.
So I didn't play a whole lot. So like that aspect of it, like so there was not the fame aspect of it for me, or like seeing my name go across the ticker on ESPN.
Right.
But there were the times when, and I was just talking to a group of students about this earlier this week, that like, going back home, like you go to the high
Yes.
school game, like you're the big man on
Yeah,
campus, like,
that's
oh, the
right.
big
That's
circus
right.
is here. Like,
The
like
big
I still
circus.
get called that if I walk into my high school today. So, like, it's that aspect of it. And then, yeah, I mean, we were good, I mean, you've got great players around you. So, like, all of that helps. But I think staying grounded, my mom made sure that, like, she was only 45 minutes away, and she told me, like, I have no reason, I'll pop up on campus if I have to. Like, I know you've done it before in school, so like I get it. So again, coming from a really good, strong mother background and
Right.
everything, like I say, the washing machine and everything, like I was a really good kid and everything. Some of my teammates might tell you I was wild. I might have been a little wild, but I was 20 years old. They were wild too, We're supposed to be wild, but as far as just humble and just doing what you needed to do and not doing anything detrimental to your character or the
Sure.
team, like,
Sure.
yeah, I was in the confines of what needed to be done.
So let's talk about 2003. You guys were top 10 in the nation. You went on and won the bowl. What division, not division, what conference were you in?
So we're in the MAC, the Mid American
Okay,
Conference.
thank you.
Yeah, Mid American Conference. So we're what you would call now, I believe, now they're power. We're not a power five. We're the
I
I
don't
don't
even
even I
understand
don't
some
want
of
to
that.
say it. If I say it, everybody's gonna crucify me on this podcast. But we're the lower level Division One. We'll just put it
Right,
that way.
right, right. So what was that year like? Were y'all, I mean, obviously when you're ranked top 10 in the nation, you kind of are aware of that. But was it far enough outside the perimeter of your vision that it just wasn't a lot of noise?
It's so funny that you asked that, because now being a fan of the game and watching athletes and watching football on TV, it's not often I do it, but sometimes this is a moment where you go back and you're like, because people always ask you, like, what was college like and all these different
Right.
things, like what was, like, to this question, you don't know it because you're just in
In
it,
it. Yeah.
and like I know if you interviewed every one of my teammates, and even Marcus was talking about his career and was so different than mine, right? He was good and was
Right.
working out for the NFL, doing all these different things, where I wasn't playing a lot. So like, but I was, when I was practicing and I'm catching passes from Ben Roethlisberger, right? Like, I didn't realize the magnitude.
Sure.
Again, I was naive of some of the guys around me and the effects that they were having across the country, and the attention that they were garnering because of their play. I did know, yeah, I saw us climbing in the ranks, and I knew the teams that we have beaten, all those different things. But like, for me, I wake up on Tuesday, I got to go to class and go to practice, and
That's
Wednesday
right.
I got to do the same thing, and then next thing you know, it's over, you know. But like, when you're in it, you're just in it, and you definitely enjoy the ride. Like, and I think there's a lot of memories that I've forgotten that other guys have, that remember, and memories that they
Sure.
have forgotten. So I think it's just very unique to everyone's perception. But when you see it on TV, again, we only see Saturday or Sunday. So
Yeah.
that
And
Monday,
and,
Tuesday, miss
and back, what years were you in college?
2000 to 2004.
Okay, so back then, I think we had Facebook, but
No,
you didn't have all that social media really.
no,
And
no.
so it is easier to stay in the moment when you don't have all that noise. What I see today, especially, with young athletes and here in Memphis, especially the high school level, is they're so caught up in the Instagram highlights and they play for that. And the college players across the country, what I've kind of seen, this past weekend, I don't want to get into the story about Deion Sanders, but you know, his son has been talking a lot on social media. And then, they played a game, I guess Saturday, and Colorado won. And then the quarterback from the other team went up to shake his hand, and Shamir, I think that's his son's name, wouldn't
Sure.
shake
Yeah.
it. And then, in the press conference, Deion was talking about how press is so hard on players today because it's changed now, the NIL. And I don't think necessarily it's the NIL. I think it's social media in general,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Absolutely.
and it's
Absolutely.
not going away. And so these kids have to learn how to self-discipline themselves
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just play.
Yeah. And because again, like we weren't really archaic. Some people may listen to this and say, yeah, that was archaic, right? But like like I said like I said earlier, like I remember seeing Sports Center and seeing our boy Martin Nance, like Sports Center top 10 making a couple catches. And then I remember seeing seeing our name go across the ticker. I remember being uptown and seeing Ben the front page of Sports Illustrated. That's all you see. Like
Right.
that's that's
Right.
that's it. So it's really, yeah, I mean, you're in the moment. Like I'm not whatever happens outside of that bubble in Oxford, Ohio, like I told somebody this the other day, this is getting Washington. I don't even know why I'm saying this.
That's okay.
I feel like not my sophomore year, maybe my freshman year. I didn't know who the vice president was for like 2 months because
That's
I was
okay.
just like,
People people
you
have
know.
people have come to Memphis and they're like, they didn't even know Memphis was in Tennessee. I'm like, really?
So yeah, that's I
You
don't know.
know,
It's
talking about the social media, I was substitute teaching a few years ago in Houston, and let's not talk about the cell phones in school, right? And um, I was telling them to put their cell phones away, and they're like, "No, we need to have them." I'm like, I went through like 22 years of school without a cell phone. Like, you can do it. You don't need the cell phone. And they're all like looking at me like, "What did you do?" Like, so people are probably like, what do you do without social media? What do you do without a cell phone? We had landlines. Like, mama had to answer the phone, right? Okay, we're aging ourselves.
yeah.
Okay. Uh,
Tell you a quick funny story this morning. Somehow the TV got turned on this morning and it was on like a 1940s black and white like horse cowboy show. And my
right.
son's 7. He goes, this was, he asked my grandmother who's passed. He goes, is this what mama, we call her mama, is this what mama dear used to watch? I'm like, yeah. He goes, did you watch this? And I'm like, when I went to her house when I was your age and I sat on the couch without an iPad and I stared at this black and white show. He was just in awe, like, what? So, yeah, buddy.
The things. Okay, so let's talk about your senior year. Like, did you already made the decision not to go in the NFL, or not to go into the draft? Like, what was your thought process that senior year?
Let's talk about this for a second.
Okay, let's do. I
As
think
we
this is
know,
going to be
it's a small percentage of guys that get to go
That's
to the
right.
NFL,
That's
right?
right.
Um, Typically, by your junior year, kind of like high school, and some people may correct me on this, you
Yeah,
know if it's going to become like an option for you.
right.
Uh, Again, I wasn't playing a lot, so the NFL for me became kind of not a thought probably after like my sophomore year. I was like, yeah, we'll see what happens. Like, because again, you start to get used. The other thing is when you see other classmates or guys coming in who are being recruited who are younger than you or even just coming in, and I'm like, I played with guys like you in high school, and you're way better than me. Like
Right.
you have to admit that, like you're way better than me. Like you're next level material. So, and we had a lot of those guys in those years. So I knew at some point where I was like, I'm not Ryan Robinson. I'm not Martin Nance. I'm not Mike Larkin. Like I can do my thing and I can keep up with them, but they've got another
Right.
gear that I can't touch. So my senior year, it was one of those. I was like, all right, it's not going to happen. But I didn't think about I probably was thinking about life after football a little bit as far as a career, but like I wasn't going above and beyond to go
Right.
out and seek to go to career fairs and different things. So it for me, it wasn't, I just knew like I'm gonna enjoy watching my friends play, and I'll go to the parties and come hang out. But like my cleats are getting hung up.
So you graduate from college, and what did you do afterwards?
Funny story. This whole like last minute thing. My academic advisor asked me, "What are you gonna do when you graduate?"
A
I
great
didn't even
question.
know. So I didn't even know I was graduating in December. And this is like August. And I wasn't, my career was done. So this is just an extra semester that
Right.
I had. So I told him, I don't know, I'll figure that out in May. He goes, "You're out of here in December." And I was like, all right, okay.
Again, that's that washing machine effect you talked about. You're just
Yeah.
going through the motion every day.
How did I get here? Like, I
Yeah,
don't even
how
know how I
did you
got
get
here. I had a couple catches in high school and got a phone call and they're
it
like,
was the flag.
it,
I'm telling you. It was the flag.
hey, it worked. So my advisor was like, "Hey, man, there's gonna be a company here. Gonna be a recruiter here. Go get a suit, get your resume together." So I went and talked to one of my teammates. Shout out to Terrell Jones, and he helped me with the interview process. I went to the interview. First interview, got the job in
Wow.
logistics. Um,
Okay, now when you say logistics,
there we go.
because
Yep.
I spent 12 years in logistics, meaning intermodal transportation. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I was in third. I
Transportation?
was in three. I was in. I was at a 3PL, third party. So
Yes.
we did everything intermodal, over the road, so trucks and
Yes. Yes.
LTL, less than
I
truckload.
I learned like I learned about
Yeah,
life because I worked
yeah,
with the truck drivers. I learned about life.
yep, yep. So that was my first job, and I was there for 2 years. Um, and then, I was actually the first Miami football player they hired, and this company's massive now. And next thing I know, I started noticing all my teammates start trickling through the door. I'm like, I see what they're doing here. They want to hire athletes. Hence, what I do today is what we may touch on later at the end
Right.
of the episode.
Yes.
Um, so then I was there for 2 years, and then took a sometimes typical athlete path, and I was like, I want to get back into athletics.
Right.
So that's when I branched off and went to go coach high school and coach college football for the next 4 years.
So let's talk about those initial couple of years. I've asked a lot of the athletes on here, what were your biggest struggles after playing the game? And I'm interested, did you have any struggles about no longer playing the game and being like a normal person every day?
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever said this. I was probably just more upset
Right.
how my career turned out, right? So I didn't get to go to college and be this big time star and be on TV and all these things. So now I'm in the workforce and it's like what am I gonna do? What am I doing? I guess I'm just gonna figure this out, right? Like
Right.
I didn't have a plan. So then it was like maybe I go back into football and coaching football. That's something I know, you know. And it wasn't until I started coaching football that light bulbs started to go off for me as they relate to the game. And I started to see the things I was asking in these young kids for them to do. I'm like, oh,
So
these are
so
the things I didn't do.
so what were some of the things? Give us some examples of what some of the things were that you were asking these young kids to do.
I mean, all of your things that your coaches were asking you to do, I want you to good grades,
Yes.
class, show up to class on time, be in meetings on time, tuck in your shirt, take your headphones off on the bus when we're on a when we're on a bus trip, you know, eat right, all of these things, all of the things, all of those things, those skills that are going to corporate
Right.
transition to the corporate world. Like
Right.
all those things that my coach was asking me, and I was too about being mad that I wasn't playing versus taking all of those things in. And I've never really thought about that actual thought till we just had this conversation.
It's really, I know a lot of people, obviously, because in the basketball world here, um, and some of them coach, and I've talked to them about, the high school players. And, they require the high school players to, you know, don't wear hoodies, don't put the hoodie on your head, don't wear slides, don't wear the Crocs. You need to wear shoes every day. You're a student athlete. You need to have good grades. You need to go to class. And they think they're mean.
No.
And they don't necessarily understand that you're teaching them how to show up in the real world.
But you're also under a microscope.
Yes, you are.
And a lot of people are looking at you and looking up to you. You don't even
That's
know
right.
it.
That's right. And you
And
may never know it.
you may never know it.
Right.
And those little things are going to shape who you are. And it was only 3 years after I graduated that I started to say those things. And I was like, I'm 27. Here I am talking to a 22-year-old who's old enough to be at the bar with me, but it's illegal because he's my player, asking asking these things of him, But they looked at me and they respected me because they knew I had just gone through it.
Sure, sure.
And they could tell, and that light bulb had started to go off for me to start to look back. And I think the first time in my life, like, accountability was really starting to become something that I truly understood what
And
that really meant.
I would think for them listening to you, I would think your story would hold more weight than somebody like Tom Brady, right? Who relied on his skills, who I mean, obviously he had other skill sets, but I mean, I would think that it holds more weight because you've struggled and you've learned what needed to be done to get you farther.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the LeBron James and Steph Curry. Everybody's like, you have a better chance of being Steph Curry than you do LeBron James because of, Steph Curry's he's the average height of a human, right?
Right.
Like, and he's just really good at what he does. But that he just put the work in, right? And so
Yes.
for me, I didn't put the work in college. I'm living proof of not putting the work in college. I'm living proof of blaming my coach. And now I look back and I didn't like my coach when I was in college because he wasn't playing me. I'll get
Right.
lunch with I got lunch with him 6 months ago. Like, and I sat down and talked to him, and because I realized I was a knucklehead.
But how hard is it for you now to admit what you just said?
Uh, it now it's not because
Do you feel any embarrassment about saying that?
no, not at all. Because someone else is going through it.
Mm-hmm. A
Someone
lot of
else is,
people are.
yeah, yeah.
A
Other
lot.
people are absolutely going through it. We all end up, every athlete thinks they're going to go in and be the person. Only a small percentage of them are going to be that person on the team. And you just gotta get in where you fit in and do what you can and put the work in because it's a job.
That's right.
And
It's a
guess
job.
what? When you put the work in that job, it's going to pay off. But guess what? When that job's over, you got to go get a real job and you got to put the work in.
Right.
And when that job doesn't work out, if that job doesn't work out and you go to the next job, guess what? You got to do it again. And it's about building those habits and just being able to reflect and take ownership of this is going to be what it's going to be. What I put into it is what I'm going to get out of it. But leveraging the resources that you have and not being afraid to be vulnerable when it comes to that, because vulnerability really, I mean, that's the nature of everything. Like, you've got to be
Sure.
vulnerable in a lot of these situations.
You do. You really do. Um, you mentioned earlier, what do you think are, because I like three, what do you think are the top three skill sets that makes an athlete a good hire?
Man, um, I was just doing this morning. Um, Now I'm probably going to draw a blank. I think it's So we were just, I'm literally doing this right now. And I honestly, I don't know if I'll answer the question. Tell me if you really, if you want me to give you a different answer. But I think it's really the ability to, maybe there's a skill set that I'm about to describe. How do you take your experiences and not only articulate them to an employer, but then be able to put those experiences to use in the workplace? You've got experiences that, again, 6% of high school kids get to go play collegiate athletes, maybe less than
Right.
that.
Right.
So taking those experiences, so it's the resilience, it's probably a really big one.
Right.
Um, because when you make a mistake in practice and a coach corrects you, the next time you're in that situation, how do you not make that mistake again? Like being resilient in that
Right.
mindset.
Right.
Um, I mean, the team piece is 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 huge, and I've heard this too, and I thought this was a very interesting perspective. They always say to athletes, "You should go into sales. You should go into sales. You should go into
And
sales."
I've never really understood that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I did, and I heard this recently, and it was a lot of athletes also, some, not a lot, but some athletes struggle in sales because sales is an individual sport.
Yes, it
We're used to
is.
being in a team environment where I can rely on, if I do my job and everyone else does their job, we're going to accomplish the goal together. Versus if I come from playing golf or tennis,
Right.
I'm a part of a team, but it's an individual sport. And
Right.
if I do my part, then my contribution to the team goes well. So I think it's select athletes from that perspective who are going to do well, who are going to do well in
I
sports. So
agree
the
with that.
team aspect of it, I think, it can be valuable. And then I think number three, I mean, it's very cliche, but I mean, I guess grit is resilience. But I think it's communication. I mean, in sports, you have to be able to communicate
Sure.
like at all levels how you
Hmm.
feel
That's right.
during you have to be able to communicate vulnerability. When do you need ask for help?
Right.
Lend a helping hand to a teammate. Like be able to be there for them to talk. I think there's so many different variations of communication that come into play when you think about becoming a hire and being able to add value to an organization.
What about strategy? Being able to strategically think about, because I mean, as much as people like to say that, football may be a dumb sport or something, I think there is strategy involved. You may not be the one out there making the calls, but I do think there is strategy involved. And also in basketball and soccer, all of those, there's strategy. It's not just throwing the ball or catching the ball or hitting somebody.
So I'm going to give you I'm going to put my coach's hat on from my perspective on strategy.
Okay.
While I think the other ones have to be taught as well, I think strategy is something that specifically you have to be intentional about learning
Mm,
because I played football. I was that part of that washing machine was like I was just coach said run here, I run here.
right.
There's concepts as to why I'm running here because this other route's coming here and it's going to affect the defense this way. That's strategy. But you have to be taught that and have to understand that. Not every athlete understands that. And I'm going to make a comment and I think it's kind of funny. I heard from a coach once before. He was like, "Hey," I said it was something about, "Hey, guys get to the NFL." And I was like, guys in the NFL are smart or something. And I was like, "There's dumb college athletes as well." And he was like, "Listen, man, if they were dumb in college, they're still dumb in the NFL. They just got a lot of money." And I was like, and I say that not to degrade anybody, but to say like not everyone always grasps the actual
Yeah,
strategy piece. And
sure.
so when I became a coach, again, I look back, I'm like, oh man, if I understood the game like this, if I invested myself into going to watch film with coaches like my teammates did after hours, the hours
Right.
when I was up on campus and I should have been down there after class for 2, 3 hours breaking down film, doing the Brady's, the Bens, and all these
Right.
guys, that strategy is you can take that anywhere. And it wasn't until again, I got to coaching and I was like, oh, there's a fundamental. This is why my coaches are in the office till 10 p.m. at night. They're trying
Mhm.
to figure out the strategy piece. So I think that's something that has to be taught, but you have to be intentional about wanting it.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I don't know. I really don't, I guess, understand why people say that athletes should go into to sales so much because um, a lot of the athletes that I know, the ones that I've talked to, they're not exactly like they don't like go out and like chit chat with everybody. It's not, it doesn't necessarily come easy for them. And I would think with sales, you have to be really outgoing and want to put yourself out there. Um, but that's just my perspective. So let's dive into let's switch and talk about your current venture. You are the founder of the fourth phase. How did this happen? How did you come to this realization and how did you make it happen?
Yeah. So 2017, former teammate asked me to join his company and help him recruit. I was like, I don't have a recruiting background. It's like, you recruited high school kids to come play college football. We'll figure it out. And I was like, let's go. Like, let's figure it out. Um, so I was with him for 4 years. You know, I'll toot the horn. We grew from 60 million to
Yeah,
$120
you
company.
definitely toot the
Uh,
horn. Yes.
we grew from 13 locations to like 23 locations across the country. And I was kind of self-taught. Like I just never, I was never in an agency and learning. So I was really kind of self-taught. So um, fast forward, and then a couple of years ago, I had an opportunity to to get into executive recruiting and whatnot, and so started kind of doing my own thing on the side, and then ultimately wasn't really executive recruiting, wasn't getting me out of bed. And so I decided, you know, everyone's always, help us find athletes, help us find athletes. I mean, that is just my DNA. And then being in recruiting and getting that question all the time, and then still having a relationship with some of the local colleges and universities here. Um, I knew I wanted to do more and help. I didn't want people to come out and be in that washing machine, right? Here's a job, great.
Right.
But a job, great. Now you're going to bounce 4 or 5 times till you figure it out. And that's fine. That's cultivating clarity. But I decided to create the fourth phase because I knew I wanted to help athletes much more than just finding them a job. And so, yeah, what we do is we help athletes, we connect them to career opportunities, and we have a program that we're still building out where they're going to go through and they're going to get everything from you know soft skill training, understanding the why
Mm.
behind what they want to do, and we're going to put them through you know um, career development, interview processes. But then ultimately, the goal is to have a portal for our clients to be able to come through and say, hey, we're ultimately acting as an agent for these
Sure.
athletes
Right.
and connecting them with opportunities, and for the client to be able to have a pick at. I mean, when you look at sports, right? I always think about the NBA, like when a guy's coming out of college, like he gets shopped around to different teams, but he
Mm.
has an agent representing him that makes him that magnifies who he is,
Right.
and that's what we want to do.
And you hope that they have their best interests at heart. Um,
Mm.
who do you see? Who is your ideal client? So if
So
somebody's
right,
listening to this podcast, who is your ideal client?
so a third party logistics company is really the space where I have found a lot of my career has just always gone and traveled, and where I really feel comfortable. So that ideal client is a 3PL, someone who's looking for that really hungry, young, you know, athlete who's got all of those, skills that you asked me about a little bit
Right.
ago, who's, whether they're money motivated or career motivated, whatever it is, and they want to be able to change their life, but change the trajectory of a company and be
Mm.
able to come into a leadership, grow into a leadership role and be able to be that mentor. So if they were a team captain, right? I don't want every athlete off of XYZ team, because
Right.
not every athlete's going to be a good employee. We want your 10, your top 10%. Hey coach, who's the Calvin Blackmon that could make a good employee, but maybe doesn't play at all?
Right.
like who's going to work his butt off for you, right? That's the kid I want to talk to. That's the kid we want to put into your company that's going to come in and be all in on helping you guys get to the goal that you want to get to.
That is very interesting. I also look at it as because when I worked for the intermodal trucking company, we looked for military guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
More so because some of the managers had military background, but it's that it's not every person's, as we talked about, as you just said, it's not every person. It's the ones that have got those skill sets that don't necessarily know where to go next
Yes.
and
Yep.
have that potential and want. I don't think you need to play as obviously with you. You don't need to play every single game and be the winning quarterback
No.
to have the skill sets that are needed in the workplace.
You have to understand what your experiences were and be able to identify those, be honest with those experiences,
Mm,
and then leverage those experiences and build on those experiences to be able to have an impact. And if you can
right.
do those things, and we're here to teach them how to do that and to magnify that, because
Right.
that's what they need. When you come out, you get all of this through college, but once you're done with college, you're. And I'm not always. And again, we don't just focus on the kid who's just graduating. If you're
Right.
27 or 28, you may have just come back from overseas, or maybe you're on your third
Mm,
job and it's like, I'm about
right.
to get married. I've got to figure this out. All right, well, let's figure out why you're on your third job. What are you looking for? Let's upskill you. Let's get you where you need to be. And let's make some introductions and hopefully get you to the place you want to be.
When we had our conversation a few weeks ago, that was something I really talked about is you really have to know your why. What's your passion and why do you want to do that? And what is your value that you have to offer? And I don't think that is something that people just know. They have to think about that. They have to figure it out. Um, where can people find more information about the fourth phase?
LinkedIn, all over LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. And website is actually in the process of being built.
Okay.
But I mean, right now, all over LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn,
It's a
and
sad day in the world if you're not on LinkedIn.
because I will say this, and I'm gonna give a shout out to another person, man, because I would be remiss if I didn't. Um, there's a company called Shift Group, and their CEO JR. He's doing the same thing, but he's also helping military. He's also helping
Mm,
military
right.
transition. And check out JR. They are doing some amazing things. And one thing JR said to the LinkedIn piece, I think he had a post that talked about resumes are from like the first resume was in like 1400 or something. And he's like, but in today's day and age, the resume is such an archaic way of
It
thinking.
is. It is.
And if companies can start to think about what we want to do is as we build this profile in this portal, we want you to hire the person for the person, not based off of, hey, let me see that piece of
That's
paper and
that's
make
right.
them a great fit. So LinkedIn, get there. That's the place to be. If you're not, hit me up, figure it out.
I will put all this in the show notes. It's something that I teach is that um you have to market yourself. The resume, yes, it's very archaic. It's also like what you've done. And I can tell you, I've looked at a lot of resumes. I don't care
Mm-hmm.
how good you are at writing a resume. I don't care who you get to write it. It can never truly speak to everything that you can do or have done. And, the LinkedIn profile it's your PR. It's your PR board. It's your place where your billboard to market yourself. And what I see is so many people struggle with is imposter syndrome and not necessarily feeling they have anything to say, or they don't want to toot their own horn, or they don't want to be seen. And as the as we go through the years, digital media is not going away, social media is not going away, the ability to see everything and everyone at any moment of the day is not going away, and you have to be able to talk about yourself, because when you go in that interview, when you're interviewing with whoever is behind the other desk, if you cannot communicate your value and what it is you do, you're not going to get the job. It's as plain as simple as that.
Yeah.
um
Can I add one last thing?
sure.
I had a former athlete ask me a couple weeks ago. I had suggested to him to get, to post on LinkedIn. I think I said like maybe once a week or once every other week, just to start getting active. And he circled back and he said, "Hey man," he's like, "the other week you told me to post." He said, "What should I post?" And I said, "Well, what other platforms are you on?" He goes, "I'm on Instagram and Snapchat and all these other." I said, "Do you post on Instagram?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "What do you post?" He's a former diver. And I was like, he's like, "Well, on my IG, I post about, I love to go cliff diving." And I said, "Dude, you're going into a sales role." I said, "Post about
Mm,
cliff diving on
mm,
LinkedIn." I said,
mm-hmm.
"You don't know what door that might open. You don't know who's going to connect with you, whose daughter or son went to your
That's right.
university that's a decision maker." I was like, don't overdo it. Don't overthink it. Just post a couple pictures, put a caption under it, and go about your
That's
day.
right.
And when you knock on one of those doors, I guarantee you one day it'll open up a sale opportunity for you. And or even more than that, it'll create a relationship for you.
Exactly. I connected with somebody on LinkedIn because it was back when COVID just started, and this gentleman, he was connected to somebody I was connected with, and he posted a picture of his Amazon boxes holding up his laptop as he did work meetings. And so I was like, oh my God, because that is like everybody, right? And so I posted one of mine, and he ended up being on my podcast at the time. And, it was just those little things that connect you. And it's always that, that interest, that you factor, because I do talk about the pyramid where it's your education, your experience, but it's the you factor that makes you stand apart from everybody else, and
Yes,
and how you can connect with that. um what do you see as your value today?
my experiences that I went through. My journey through college is, again, I'm not here if it wasn't for that. And I love coaching on the field. I also love coaching off the field, and being able to marry those two and bring that full circle to
Mm-hmm.
help our young people. Because there's never enough support.
That's right.
I just had a college tell me the other day, we've got contracts already in place with some already placement development people of this, that, and the other, career development. And I was like, what I'm doing for athletes is free.
Mm.
What you're telling me is you think you have enough support already. Got it.
So, but let me ask you this: would they place more value in your program if it wasn't free?
I don't, I mean, for me, so I mean, I'm a recruiting agency at the end of the
Right.
day. So like, you know, money is made from where the client, through
Right.
the actual client where we place them. For me, it's about the ath. So the fourth phase also has a community
Mm-hmm.
where we just open it
I
up.
saw your post on LinkedIn. That's
Yes. So athletes are able to go in there, and we have speaker series about financial success, about health and wellness, about all of these different things where someone could come in like yourself and talk about personal branding. So this is a community for athletes to come in and be able to network with their peers. So for me, like, I don't need the university. All I want is when that person, university, when they're 2 years removed, 1% of students may come back to the university and say, "Hey, I can't find a job."
right.
But you're not reaching out to them when they're 3 years out of college to say, "Hey, can we help you?" No, because a whole new wave of students have come through. We are that extension for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Right.
And that's what that community is for. So if they place more value on it, if we charge them, great, not my thing.
What I've seen, because I've reached out to some colleges to see if I could use my services to help them. And what I've seen is their career centers are their main focus. They want the students to use their career services. But what the issue that I see is that the career services markets themselves, but I don't necessarily think they're reaching all of the students. I don't think I don't think they're going out and reaching the students, going to classes. I don't want to name any names, but it's great to have apps that the colleges use, and you want the students to get on the app and they find out more information, or come visit, career services, and they put that on Facebook and Instagram, and maybe if they're lucky, LinkedIn. But what about going to the classes, showing up, hey, calling each professor and saying, hey, can I come spend 15, 20 minutes talking to your class about the services that we offer? To me, outreach, not just standing back and say, yo, I'm here, but actually going out and doing outreach into the campus and trying to reach the people where they are.
What when is there too much help?
I would say never.
I mean, are we going to tell 5-year-old kids who, may not have a home and all of these different things that youth are going through, we can't help you. You've got enough canned food. What are we talking about here? And when it's again, the gap is after college.
Right, it
They've
is.
paid their money. You've given them all of the resources. Most of them don't believe you because it's just 4 years beating their head. Ha, case right here. It's after they're done. Where do they go? Employers got to do what they got to do. They got to find good people. How do you continue to help them and provide the support when they're done,
Sure.
like a LinkedIn? So
Sure.
that's where, if you care, you care. If you don't pretend like you do.
Exactly. Okay, so what would you have gone back and told a 9-year-old Calvin? If you could go back and talk to yourself at 9 years old, what would you tell a 9-year-old Calvin?
You've been in my notes. I just made the students on Monday do this exact exercise, but I said
I
10 years
ask
old.
at the end of every episode.
I know you do.
I started asking by accident, and I was floored with the answer because the gentleman said, I don't think I have any value. And I was like, that's up, because I think that leads into the athlete retiring or no longer playing competitive sports and the lack of value that they see in themselves. So what would you go back and tell a 9-year-old Calvin?
I have to put myself in my dad's shoes
Mm,
and I think
you can't
it's
make me cry. I tell you, cannot.
no, this won't be this won't be emotional, but I think it's just like you just like I don't know. I don't want to just say like work hard, but like you've got to be all in. Like you've really got to be all in on any and everything you do. And what does that mean? Like we'll figure that out. We'll be there to help you and support you. But like you've got to be all in on anything that you do. And because life moves fast and I wasn't all in and I didn't know that I needed to be all in.
No, I get that. I think that's really good. Okay, so now I want to recap the three biggest takeaways because I actually took notes. This was the first time I've done this. I want to recap your three biggest takeaways from this interview. Well, what I did was I looked at the three issues that you said at the very beginning. You said you wished you had known how to leverage your resources more. Number two was you wished you'd had a better focus on the academics and their value and learn to work on preparation. And number three, um, work, finding that work when you leave. Because I had to write really fast and I can't read
Yeah.
my writing.
It's all good.
um, so for you, what is the message that if we can like sum this up, I know because we talked about a lot, but what is the one message that you would like to leave all the listeners with today or those watching on YouTube? What is that? What is that one message?
And I've heard it a few times, but it's work where your butt is. Really work where your butt is. But be present, be in the moment, be intentional, and be consistent. I think a couple of things that I've said most recently are have intentionality and be consistent.
Right.
Because when you're intentional and you're consistent about what you're doing, the rest takes care of it. I mean, the proof is there. If I would have been intentional about the things
Right.
that I needed to do in football, and I would have consistently watched film, you might have a little NFL acronym next to my name down there right now, But it's, but I think you just got to be intentional. and be consistent, and be present. I think and be present in this day and age we are in, especially coming from a father,
Right.
and a husband, like, and an entrepreneur now, like, be present. Because I've had my daughter already say, "Dad, look at me when I'm talking to you." I'm like,
How old is she?
8.
Oh my God. Was that like
It's yeah,
a
it's
punch?
yeah, because she's talking to me. Here I am reading a damn email, and I'm like,
Right.
phone down, man. Like,
But I love the fact that she pointed that out. Like, I love the fact that she was conscious enough of that to point it out and ask you to please look at her. She gonna be a little boss one day, a big boss.
you better be.
Okay, so for all of you that want to find out more about Calvin, connect with him, you can go to LinkedIn, Calvin Blackmon, the fourth phase, and I will put everything in the show notes as well. If you're watching YouTube, then obviously you see it on the screen here. But anyway, thank you. Thank you. As we wrap up today's show, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been such a treat for me.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much. Like you said earlier, I reached out because I was curious about, I love what you do with the personal brand. So I really just had a couple questions, and then
I blackmailed you into
you blackmailed me, which,
it.
no, and I appreciate it.
I was strategically
Hey,
encouraged you.
it worked. Again, I hope I hope if I can affect one person with this
Well, sure.
episode, then let's do it.
And if I can say one other thing, it's that, I also look at it as I'm putting you on a platform to reach other people. And so, for any of you out there, whether you're athletes, current, former athletes, whether you're just an everyday person doing an everyday job, putting yourself in situations where you can meet other people or they can get to know who you are, take that opportunity. Don't, get outside your comfort zone and take that opportunity. And as much as this has been hard for me to do by myself for the past 8, 9 months, I really enjoy these conversations. And, I look at it as I'm spreading information, I'm telling the stories of everyday people that other people can take lessons from, and I'm learning so much as well, but I'm also, other people are getting to know me. And so I always look at that factor as well. I'm marketing myself just as much as I'm allowing you to market yourself. Um,
And you're being intentional, you're being consistent, and you're being present.
It's hard, but yes.
It
Okay.
is.
Okay. Thank you so, so very much. So, thank you all for listening, especially if you've made it all the way to this part of the show. I appreciate all your support. Another reminder to subscribe to the show wherever you listen or watch. My mantra is like, share, and review. Follow us on social media at 5THQRT Podcast. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.